It's next time! Again! Lila Live. So this is basically just Jerid's route, only with Lila. I'm gonna go ahead and just pump it up, if you don't mind. Because we will be playing him quite a bit more. I've basically just blown most of my battle points just right then and there. Congrats, me!
Lieutenant Jerid Mesa, heading out. You're unlucky to have run into me.
I mean, there were some Titans characters who at least had some scruples. Jerid Mesa was not one of them.
Don't forget where we are.
He was an ignorant brat, start to finish. Entitled little Earthnoid.
Point there.
Funny part is, in the lore, because I remember Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, the Marasai was originally built to be the replacement for the Gym 2 in AUG's service. The problem was the Titans happened to find the secret, quote, secret production line, and were like, I wonder who you're making all these robots for. It has to be us, because the Federation couldn't afford them, nor have they passed an order by us, so it must be for us. And they were like, yeah, sure, we were making these robots for you. So the Titans got the Marasai, and all of a sudden the AUG is like, okay, look, Anaheim, you made a promise to us for a next-generation mobile suit to replace our existing mass production stock. So where is it? And they're like, don't worry, you know, we got it. We got you covered. We'll figure it out. And they created the Nemo. It's important to note as well that the Nemo would actually become an extremely influential design because the Jagan, which was a I think it was the longest-serving mass production mobile suit that was featured in the 1 Year War. Not the 1 Year War, the Universal Century. The Jagan, which served from Char's counterattack all the way through was it Crossbone Gundam? No, it was Gundam F91, which came before Crossbone Gundam, but I think it was in Crossbone Gundam too. Like, that was there until the Zalos War, or whatever it was, that was in Victory Gundam. But yeah, the Nemo was a case of, shit, we gotta put together a mobile suit that's better than the Gym 2, and we gotta do it in, like, a couple weeks, because we made a promise to the AUG, but the entire stock we were putting aside for them just got taken by the Titans, because we had to maintain the pretense that we're not working for both sides. I mean, both sides knew that they were working for both sides, but it was very important that that fact not be obvious. That had to be a little bit of a sneaky beaky there, and so they basically created a mobile suit with... It's extremely cheap. Like, the features are all very square, it's very blocky, but it's got a lot of armor for, like, its weight. It's got a tremendous amount of thrusters. And it was extraordinarily reliable, because they sort of went for a, you know, tried and tested parts in its construction, as opposed to anything, you know, fancier and new, which is kind of what they used in the Marasai. Like, it was this entirely new frame and so forth. And it turns out the Nemo was just a solid product. It just worked. Like, it was never intended really to be an ace machine. It was just a mass production mobile suit. It had to be cheap, and it had to get the best possible functionality for the cost. And it got a good balance of not being so cheap that it could offset having zero functionality, but not being so crap that it would only succeed by merit of its low price. So it wasn't great in terms of performance, and it wasn't the cheapest thing around, but in terms of, like, that cost to effectiveness ratio, the Nemo was just unmatched. And they used it with a bit of the Gym, or one of the Gym successors, in order to create the Jagan series, which I've always been a bit skeptical about the Jagan. Part of the reason for that is that the Jagan has no skirt armor, which is it's not like a functional problem. It's just that it makes it look weird, because pretty much every mobile suit in the Gundam lore that has, like, legs, as opposed to, like, the Draw C or whatever that's designed specifically for space combat, they have skirt armor. And it helps to veil the fact that they get little robot hips. But on the Jagan, you can clearly see the little robot hips because it's got no skirt armor to hide them. Unless you're talking like the Stark Jagan, which has extra armor. And they included, fittingly, skirt armor. Skirt armor is the general notion that's used to refer to it because, I mean, there's a term for it in the actual design of proper armor, both in Europe and in Japan, because they have a lamellar armor that's used to protect the waist. And the problem with protecting the sort of loin region in terms of armor is the fact that your hips need a lot of freedom of movement, because you have to be able to run, squat, you know, maintain stability with all this armor on. But at the same time, you don't want to leave the inseam vulnerable, because that's not a place you really want to get hit without some kind of protection down there. You know what I mean? The result, such that it is,
Lieutenant Jerid Mesa, heading out.
is basically either like a male skirt with solid strips of metal put across it is frequently used. Sometimes you have more elaborate arrangements of many strips overlapping, you know, lamellar armor. And they're attached together with rivets or an underlying leather support structure. Like, not intended to offer protection, because it would just be like leather strips, but to create a structure for the plates themselves to interlock. And it works. I mean, personal armor became extremely sophisticated in terms of the materials used to make it, because in order to stop bullets fired from rifles, you need a something that's strong, incredibly strong, but also light. So, like, modern protective armor for rifle rounds is made up of, like, exotics like boron and all kinds of other weird materials composited together. It's usually a composite armor with a metal plate and a ceramic plate and sort of a glass, industrial diamond, whatever plate. If that sounds hilariously expensive, that's only because it is. But I suppose that doesn't seem all that important when it's like, this is what will be between you and the bullet that will bring you to a swift and definitive end. But the thing is, the external configuration of the armor became extremely unsophisticated, because armor that would be thin enough to articulate in that fashion would not offer sufficient ballistic protection. There's also a weight issue. You can't afford to cover the person's whole body because, again, the armor would be too heavy. You have to limit the armor to protecting those areas of the body that are vital, the areas where a hit would prove fatal. And ultimately, well, the chest, of course. You want to get something on the head if you can manage it. But the arms, legs, that's not really a point that's... I mean, shoulders, people wonder, like, why the little shoulder bits? It's because, well, for your arms to come out of the chest piece, there has to be a hole in the armor where your arms come out, and a shot can exploit that hole and pass into your chest through your shoulder. So you get a little shoulder panel that helps to make sure that if a shot comes broadside at you through the shoulder, it doesn't go straight into your chest and puncture a lung or sever your spine or get into your heart or any other nasty things that it'd be able to do, shatter ribs, pneumothorax, which is actually horrifying. For those of you wondering what pneumothorax is, that's when air leaks into your chest cavity, typically from your lung. The problem that creates is that the expansion of your lungs, the process of breathing, requires a pressure differential that's generated in your thorax by your diaphragm. If air gets in the chest but is outside of the lung, your lungs collapse. And if lung collapsing sounds bad, that's only because it is. Naturally. You don't want your lungs collapsing. Technically, that happens when you're too close to an explosion as well, but that's more of a pressure thing. If you're exposed to enough pressure, your lungs basically liquefy. They're extremely thin, delicate tissue. They're subjected to the trauma of a shockwave, and they just turn to jelly. And then you no breathe.
They're using poison gas. We have to stop that operation.
Don't take him lightly, Jerid.
Oh my god, he keeps dodging every other shot. He reminds me of those Metroids from AM2R that just... Wow, that missed him by a mile. Why is he packing his big cannon for this mission is my question. I mean, it's not like the poisonous gas canisters are armored, at least. Why would you armor a poisonous gas canister? I suppose to prevent somebody from easily destroying it, but it's established in the Gundam lore that any armor that can stop a beam attack would be so horrendously large and heavy as to be impractical, which is why the internal frame design came into being. The idea of... Because, okay, if you look at, say, a perfect grade model for a one-year war mobile suit, back then they had what would be called a semi-monocoque, and a semi-monocoque means that... Because a monocoque means that the skin, the exterior structure of the device, serves as its supporting structure. It's the weight-bearing component that holds the internals. Basically an exoskeleton. Now, a semi-monocoque is a term that refers to a structure where there is an external skin that is not load-bearing, but the structure is directly beneath the skin, encapsulating the internal components of the design.
All right.
As opposed to having the components mounted onto it, they are inside of it. So, basically, if you look at a perfect grade RX-78, it looks like a space frame. It's a bunch of, like, triangles, sort of box girder type of configurations. And it's set up in such a way that the components are inside of that frame. Now, that's great for, like, durability, and in fact, if you were talking, like, a melee fight between a one-year war mobile suit and one from the Grips conflict, the one-year war mobile suit, you know, just through brute force would win hands down, because structurally it's a lot stronger. But there was a mobility issue that design created as a problem, because you need all these rockets and jets for agility to be poking out of it, which creates a design problem. There's also the issue that they needed to cut down on weight, because that would grant even more maneuverability. But having this exoskeleton makes the design incredibly heavy. So, the Gundam Mark II, by comparison, if you look at like a perfect grade model of that, it has an internal skeleton that supports its components. It's endoskeletal, as opposed to having this skeletal frame into which the pieces are then laid out. Gotta focus on Emma. Her we can actually defeat. She's gonna try to book. And she ain't getting a chance. So during the Grips conflict, the skins of the mobile suits are actually really lousy in terms of armor protection. They're covered in thrusters, which represent obvious weak points. They're not really firmly supported by the underlying structure. They're basically just covering to keep, like, dust and space debris and stuff like that out. And the idea, though, was that that was a development that was a result of the advent of beam weapons. Because again, megaparticle cannons and megaparticle weapons are so powerful innately that any armor that can resist them is incredibly impractical. Now, shields are still employed because they're given an anti-beam coating which enables the barrier, the shield, to dissipate a beam blast by sacrificing part of its anti-beam coating. The problem is, if it takes a few hits, that beam coating has ablated, it has turned into gas and just vented off of the shield, which saves the shield, but any subsequent hits after that, the shield goes. Just like anything else.
Lieutenant Jerid heading out.
Now, why don't they apply the anti-beam coating to the armor of the mobile suits? Well, from what I understand, the coating's ablation is quite energetic. So basically, the beam hits the coating absorbs the energy of the beam, in the form of heat, and dissipates that by vaporizing. Well, the problem is, the energy of that blast, when it vaporizes, creates pressure on the shield. And the issue is if you used an anti-beam coating in that way, the force exerted by the resultant explosion of the coating vaporizing off of the armor would fracture and break the armor. Ironically, a machine from the One-Year War would probably be able to take it, but by the time of the Grips conflict, like I said, the armor had become extremely thin and relatively weak, and so that shit would just break. It just could not take the force of the impact. So you get this big lump of metal to put your coating on that can handle an explosion when the coating gets hit with a beam blast. Because that makes sense. He's gonna escape. No, he does not get to fly out of the combat zone and then still shoot me. Fuck off. And the idea behind, mobile suits need a lot more maneuverability was the fact that, well, if they can't tank a beam hit, they have to avoid one. Now, for the record, you can't dodge a beam, because despite how slow they move in this game, beam weapons in the Gundam universe are traveling at relativistic speed, so you're talking about significant fractions of the speed of light. However, by making yourself extremely maneuverable, you might not be able to dodge the beam, but you might be able to dodge the gun aiming and firing that beam. You might be able to dodge the eye or the hand of the person taking the shot. That was the mindset of, making mobile suits more maneuverable. And to some extent, the whole experiment, if you will, that went along with transforming mobile suits kind of tied into that notion of, we need more maneuverability. That's... Maneuverability is life. Speed is key! Problem was, again, in a nod to realism, they were impractical, they were expensive, and so transforming mobile suits never really disappeared, but they never became a mainstay of any major force in the Universal Century timeline.
I'm returning now.
I mean, sure, you've got your Gaza Cs and Gaza Ds. Some of them did see mass production, but at the same time, those mobile suits were serving alongside 10 times their number in conventional mobile suit designs.
Heading out.
The Gyara Zulu, the Gyara Doga. Technically, the Gyara Doga preceded the Gyara Zulu.
Burn anyone who comes near me to ashes.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I really wanted to, use the O Gundam and the Double O Gundam and Exia and Dynamis, but they never really made a... they never really made a Gundam 00 game in the style of this, or even something like Zeonic Front, which was a lot more like Armored Core, as opposed to this, which is very arcadey. Thing is, the way mobile suits handle in the Gundam lore, constructing a game that treats them in the format of something like, say, MechWarrior as a simulator wouldn't work, because the simulators often make the machines you control clumsy and complicated, because that's the point. You know, planes, trains, they're all very large machines with a lot of moving parts, a lot of nuance. If you had that applied to a Gundam title, it would basically be unplayable, because how are you supposed to dart around and maneuver and just, you know, bounce around like a jackrabbit? I am actually looking forward to actually getting my hands on a Gundam ground type. It's one of my favorite, like, one-year war models, and I know that it's got, like, no space capability. That's what Blue Destiny is for, because that was basically it used parts from the Gundam ground type, but it was an entirely different design. I forget what made it special. I actually remember the name of the Ashamar model, the mobile suit variation. It was the Danda Chakra version, which was so chunky. And that's saying something, because the Ashamar is pretty chunky as it is. It was the Chungus among us.
Lila, Jerid.
Serious? That didn't even connect. Look at that hitbox.
All right, I'm returning now.
Ah, yes, the time-sensitive one. Again.
Lieutenant
And we'll
Jerid,
have to do it again. Arasai.
there's no time.
Any more damage is dangerous.
Okay. Why are there Musai in the distance? Like, weren't those retired at this point? Well, I mean, whatever the hell it is, Haman's ship is in the distance, so I guess it's an accurate backdrop, but Musai? Really? I mean, they're probably Musai Kai. I mean, I would hope so. You telling me I have more attention to detail than the Japanese? God, I think I've already mentioned this, but yeah, Gundam Abridged, because yes, they did an abridged Mobile Suit Gundam, made the joke, my fucking worldview was shattered, by the way, with this joke, because he's like, "Sir, there's a ship out there, but I can't tell you what it is." And the captain, who's like dying at the time, is like, "What does it look like?" Kind of like the end of the Starship Enterprise, only upside down. It's a Musai. Can't be. I don't see any antlers. And the revelation was the fact that oh fuck, it actually is the Enterprise, only upside down. And I was like, how the fuck did I not see that? How is that a thing that just slipped my fucking mind, that it's literally the Starship Enterprise? I mean, jokes abound about how the Japanese tend to appropriate the cultures of others for their own media, which some call that a bit of a presumption, but it's like, no, they do it. Look at the soundtrack for Blue Gender. It's all ripped off, like, licensed songs. I mean, fucking Skeletons of Society is, like, the main theme. Well, that's not the main theme. That's original. They wouldn't be that bold, would they? Make the main theme a ripoff? Fantastic. Only Doom... Actually, did Doom do that? I don't know. May have, it may have not. I'm gonna go with Recover. I have a feeling I'm gonna need it for some reason. I sense a disturbance in the Schwartz.
You're not gonna strike first?
Let's go into floaty mode. Yeah, somehow turning myself into half of an egg makes me float. Don't ask me, I haven't the foggiest. Probably just trying to give this mode some purpose other than just looking weird.
Here's another one.
Hey, look, Mom, an ATST from Star Wars.
Any more damage, fire. Can't go anywhere until I get better.
Well, I suppose I should look on the bright side. I'm a smaller target. Oh, that actually connected. No! I was animation locked. Animation lock is a major factor in gameplay of this game and the meta strategy. Because certain attacks lock you in the attack animation and others don't, like melee in particular. There's also an issue of angle, like if I'm firing dead ahead, I don't have an animation for firing, I just have the mobile suit's physical posture shift slightly. But if I'm trying to fire like at a much steeper angle, I whip around and that locks me in an animation. Take to the sky.
You guys are antiques now. Don't take me lightly.
I don't know what I was expecting to happen there, but it didn't. I haven't left half egg mode this whole time. And yes, I can melee in this mode, as awkward as it looks and or sounds. Come on, shot herself with her freaking funnels. Whoa! Whoa! Excuse you. I'm moving here. Everybody was a kung fu fighting. Oh, God, that was awful. I was just in a goddamn nexus of fire there. Holy shit.
All right, I'm returning now.
It looks so dumb in that mode. Look at it! It just looked up! It just rolled its eye! It rolled its eye at itself! Or was it rolling its eye at me? Are you mocking me? It looks like you're mocking me. Are you mocking me? Fuck it. Assault. Get more use out of it than Recover. That gets sponged by my allies all the time. Oh, there's the Ashimar.
Come on, show me what you
I always called it Flying Donut. It doesn't help that the middle of it is a different color than the outside. It looks like a donut. It seriously looks like a donut. It's a shame it doesn't have a Gerwalk mode like this, so you can just be the donut. Because I'd love to be the donut.
The radish is burning.
Ooh, timed that perfectly.
Jerid.
Now I'm using the mirror.
Because of people like you that all this fighting never ends. Go away. You got something else. Boy, fight. I haven't murdered nearly as many people as you have. I am not a murderer. Tired of fighting doesn't help you. I'm gonna take you out right
Wait a minute, Lila's using a Gabflay? Was she even given a Gabflay in her route? Come on, Japan, try harder. No, there we go. I went egg mode for some reason. That literally serves no purpose if you're fighting in 0G, because it's something that exclusively benefits you on the ground. Oh, hey, 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 hey! I'm flying here, hey! Ooh, that was a good hit. Ooh, that was another good hit. I'm on fire! Another one! I'm dooming it up in here with all this shotgun. Yeah! And now we really get to make Camille suffer. We can't be stun-locked in this state. We can't even be staggered in this state. We take less damage and we deal more damage. Unfortunately, it is extremely short-lived. You get a speed boost too, but if you're going for that, go for mobility because it lasts longer. And it's quicker to charge up. I'm actually killing it with the scattering beam cannon here. I'm a sword ya! Why is he being such a pushover this time? My god, is one of this thing's melee maneuvers literally just a claw bitch slap? I saw that. That was a claw bitch slap. That connected with nothing. Oh, Lila died. And there goes Camille. I'm still crackling with otherworldly power. Don't ask me why one of its hands is a claw. There's no explanation. The mechanical designer must have had a fever dream and just threw that shit together. Jerid has survived. He has not lost everything, but this is not his triumphant victory. Can history be changed? Oh, God, stop beating the fact that there's alternate timelines over the head. Or over our heads, for that matter. Yeah. And now we gotta play the same ones over again. Well, I'm probably just gonna bundle this in the same video, because it's only half of Jerid's route. Give or take.
Lieutenant Jerid Mesa heading out.
Hey, look, I didn't even want to play Jerid's route, but to get this shit done, I have to, so... You know, fuck it. I'm gonna suffer, you're gonna suffer with me, goddammit.
Why isn't the Zeta gun?
Oh yeah, this is the version of the fight where there's no Psycho Gundam. That's gonna make things, a bit more interesting, probably. Yeah, we got a Mouar in her Byaland, and just me in a Byaland. Ooh, dropkick. Flying monkey. God, True Crime Streets of LA, what a fucking disaster that was. The Grand Theft Auto killer my ass. That's all I have to say. That game didn't come close. And then, of course, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas decided to... Rockstar, I should say, decided to be sort of the king showing off his crown to the court because they literally have a billboard or whatever in there that makes reference, and it's actually shown in a cutscene, so it's not like you'd ever miss it, where it's True Crime Street Cleaners, and it's just... The joke being that True Crime was a piece of shit, because it fucking was! Yes, I still beat all of the possible endings on it, but that game was just... Because the idea was, oh, we're going to combine the mechanics of a fighting game, the mechanics of a shooter, the mechanics of a driving game, and stealth mechanics in the same experience, and it's going to be awesome. This did not happen. Quattro! You may have bought Camille a chance to escape, but come hell or high water, I'm cutting you down where you stand. I'm gonna rend you like a tatami. Where are you going, huh? Where are you going? What you get for ruining my shot at the Zeta Gundam. Interloper.
Times have changed. You guys are antiques now. All right, I'm returning now.
Mouar, you're blocking my glory shot. Dakar.
Leave it to me. Come on, show me what you got. I'll burn
So
anyone
wait,
who's
she's in a
ready.
Bialan last mission and now she's back in a Gab flight? Why? Why the sudden changeover? What, does she just not like the Bialans? Here's something that's a spice. It's gonna be a bit spicy for Gundam fans, especially North American Gundam fans. I didn't care for Gundam Wing. I'm sorry, I did not like that show. On the other hand, I loved Gundam 00, and the real reason that's going to confuse a lot of people is, what do you mean you hate Gundam Wing but you love Gundam 00? 00 was like the spiritual successor slash reboot of Gundam Wing. And it's like, yes, but Gundam Wing screwed up a lot, whereas 00 didn't. 00 did it right. It took them a second try to get that kind of a story to work. Because they're both a lot more on the nose about the anti-war message, like, we're fighting to end war. Like, okay, I mean, I view that as perhaps paradoxical to fight to end war, because I'm gonna start a war to end all wars. Yeah, that's been tried, and it just never works. But there's the thing that, like, first of all, the characters in Gundam Wing I did not find to be memorable. They're never really characterized, they're also stoic, like, oh, Death Scythe's operator and Sandrock's operator, I don't even remember their names. They had some character, but like the Asian guy who ran like Shenhu or Laoshin or whatever the hell it was called, he was basically like Vegeta brooding in the distance, never speaking. Heavy Arms operator also basically never spoke, and Wings operator basically never talked. It's like, oh, and then of course the organization they're fighting, because it's like, oh, you know, it's an evil organization. Really? What are they doing that's evil? If it was mentioned in the show, I don't remember it, so if there was even a point to get across there, they didn't do a very good job of getting that point across. I'm profoundly observant, and if I didn't notice, then that shit must have been buried deep. Then the mobile suits that don't make any sense either. I mean, it's like, here's Gundam Wing. It's got a BFG. The problem is, its BFG's good for 3 shots, and then it's completely out of ammo, and it has to rely on its beam saber. Here's Death Sight. It has no ranged weapons to speak of whatsoever. Here's the Chinese one, whatever. No ranged options whatsoever. Here's Sandrock. No ranged options whatsoever. And Heavy Arms. It's bristling with guns. The problem is, it's got so many guns, it runs out of ammo in about 30 seconds, and it's forced to resort to a knife. Not even like a beam knife. An actual physical blade attached to its wrist. And it's like, okay, so let me recap this for you. And furthermore, all of these mobile suits were engineered by scientists alone, and it's just like, there's so much goddamn wrong with that. Where the fuck do I start? I mean, it's like, okay, first of all, do you understand the price of developing a piece of technology that complex?
There's no time.
The computational calculations. Where are the computers? Who's paying for those? Who's running the processor cycles? Who's feeding the scientists during the duration? What are they doing for money? And then besides which, there's the fact that, like, you can test all you want in simulation until you've actually run it in practice. It's not going to work. And then that's the other issue. They then built the mobile suits, like, autonomously, and it's like, where'd they get the money for that? Yeah, you're telling me they just built a whole-ass mobile suit, a giant robot the size of a building that is extremely advanced compared to the contemporary mobile suits, and each one of these scientists was just able to somehow put that together? Where did they get the probably millions of dollars worth of resources and exotic metals and fuel and infrastructure to make the microprocessor? Like, are you actually taking the piss? And if all of that was not enough, these guys are so ingenious, so brilliant, that they could pull all of this off. They could accomplish all of this impossible bullshit. They decided to design the mobile suit so that they have no ranged combat options. For all intents and purposes, most of them have no guns. And it's like, wow, the Galaxy Brain, 3 million IQ, man. You're in a shooting war with nothing to shoot! Are you fucking kidding me? What? Ugh. And I know somebody's going to say that, oh, well, actually, they had a factory and there was, this special organization, da-da-da. And it's like, but to unearth these details in the series, you have to dig deep. There's also the fact that a lot of it is still extremely contrived. It's a load of bullshit is what it is. And you need to stop being nostalgic about the series and fucking admit it. The reason there are so many North American, people who love Gundam Wing is because it was their first Gundam. It was on Toonami. My first Gundam series, you want to know what that was? The original. The OG, 0079. That was my first Gundam series. I don't have a biased opinion towards Wing. And most of the people who don't think of it as, it was alright. Not particularly special. Exactly! Perhaps that's a far cry from my kind of vehement dislike of that series. But yeah, a lot of people just it was okay. But these North American guys ooh, Gundam Wing, Gundam Wing! It's like, this is coming entirely from a place of nostalgia, you realize. There's nothing special or particularly good about that series compared to the other Gundam series. In fact, there are a lot of things I can name that are just wrong about it. Now, Gundam 00 has a similar plotline. We've got a small group of pilots piloting machines that are radically more advanced than what is contemporarily available, and designed by a small group of people, a sort of cabal. The thing is, Gundam 00 not only explains how in the hell all of that got pulled off, it actually does a good job of explaining it. It's clear, it's evident, and most importantly, it's actually logical and makes some degree of sense that it could actually have been done that way. Okay, how did they design these extremely, super advanced machines? And it's well, a celestial being, the organization responsible for their creation, created a sort of think tank. They got the best minds of their generation together in one place, and they sold them on this idea, not only with the notion that you would be working with some of the best minds of your generation, but for the fact that you'd be working towards the end of a definitive end to war. Bang! Zoom! I buy into it. Where'd they get the money and the infrastructure and the resources? Well, again, you've got some of the brainiest people on the planet. They hacked shit. They stole shit. They made stuff happen, and it all just kind of worked. It all gelled together. It's oh, but if they actually have infrastructure, if they have facilities and dormitories, and they have people that have to be paid and so forth, how could they keep this all a secret? Beta. Again, all these brainy guys came up with a supercomputer that was probably 2 centuries ahead of its time, and switched it on, and basically it could just hack anything. Nearly. Point is, if anything about Celestial Being came up in the network, Veda just shut that shit down. It just nope, doesn't exist. There's nothing to see here, move along. And I buy into that, too. And then, of course, the pilots, it's like... Okay, so again, these genius scientists in Gundam Wing, right? For piloting their mobile suits, these extremely advanced, one-of-a-kind machines that are meant to sort of bring an end to war, you choose a bunch of teenagers. Really? That's your go-to there, a bunch of teenagers. Now, Double O makes the point that, okay, so these are all still teens, but for the most part, they're all late teens. In fact, Neil and Lyle DeLandy were already in their 20s, I think, by the time the series started. So they're not even all teens. Let me contextualize the 4 pilots that they had, okay? We have Tieria Airday. First of all, he's basically a replicant. He's a robot human man. So age is not really a factor there. Neil and Lyle DeLandy, the identical twin brothers who piloted the sniper mobile suits, in their 20s. Hallelujah and hallelujah. Teenager at the start of the series turns 18 before we're like halfway through the first season. Bang zoom. The only actual like 13-year-old tween whatever that was like piloting a mobile suit was Setsuna F. Sei. And you know what? He fucking deserves it. Why does he deserve it? Because he was an indoctrinated, brainwashed child soldier who has more reason to hate war and the evil it brings out in man than any other person. He's also a dyed-in-the-wool survivor and fighter from his childhood experiences. Like, if anybody deserves to be a kid piloting a giant, like, super destructive murder robot, it's Setsuna F. Sei. Or whatever the hell his real name is, because that was his code name. But he basically abandoned his real name. It's Soran Ibrahim or something like that. That was his real name. But yeah, no, like, that makes sense. And Double O just made so much sense in ways that Gundam Wing made absolutely no fucking sense. And then it actually bothers to consider the broader implications of what it's suggesting. Like, Gundam Wing explored this notion of, oh, we have these autonomous mobile suits. They're driven by robot intelligence and operate completely independent of human intervention. Okay, is there a way that that can go wrong? Can somebody hack the system and turn the machines on their masters? Can somebody this or that? Could the machines revolt? How intelligent are these machines? None of this is explored. Now, on the other hand, creating the Innovades, these artificial replicant humans, is thoroughly explored in Gundam 00 because one of them straight up fucking rebels and tries to take over the world. That becomes the whole plot of Season 2, and it was a subplot of Season 1. That one of them just decides, I was made to serve humanity. I'm going to serve humanity by ruling it, because it's my rightful place because we are superior to humans. And it's like, well, they actually explored the notion of why we don't make synthetic people. Because, especially, like, immortal and capable of linking with the internet, imagine the disaster that that could create. And of course, furthermore, like, you remember the bullshit where all of the Gundam Wing mobile suits just were melee? Some of them melee only? You don't have that shit! You got the sniper one, which obviously has a gun. You got the big-ass tanky cannon one, also has a gun. You got the plane one with guns, rockets, and bombs. And the one that's dedicated specifically for melee, Gundam Exia, still has a beam rifle and beam sabers designed to be thrown. And Vulcans! It's like, oh my god, like, Gundam 00 did it right. Gundam Wing screwed the pooch. It did it wrong. It just didn't work. I'm sorry. It's the truth. But anyway, since I've been going off about how Gundam Wing sucks all kinds of ass, and Gundam 00 is basically like the second coming of the original Gundam, yeah, I'm gonna be starting the one-year war route with the Titans characters, which they were Fetty pilots back then, but we don't get the super machines here. We get the Everyman mobile suits, which is what I'm looking forward to, stuff like the Gundam Ground type. But that's for next time.